With me today on the Agents to Owners podcast, someone as I view a leader in our insurance space. He is Mike Crowley from Crowley Insurance Agency, located in Syracuse, New York. Mr. Crowley, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Brad. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, excited to have you here and get to know each other a little better and learn about what's going on in your world. So let's,
Awesome.
as we always do, let's start from the beginning. Why don't you tell us how you got into this business and your background in insurance?
Awesome. Yeah. So, typical family agency, join when you graduate, high school or college. Um, Day after college graduation, I was in the office full time and I haven't looked back. So that's how I got into the industry. I'm a third generation in our family's agency, and I've loved every minute of it. Obviously, working in a family business comes with its own unique scenarios that only true family agencies or businesses really can understand. But yeah, no. So been in the business now almost 17 years. And again, it's the only basically career that I've ever had and probably that I ever will have.
Yeah, when you jumped in, what kind of role did you jump in as? Were you more of a producer or just office help or?
Yeah. So our family agency was a, very service oriented agency. Every new sale or piece of sale was only referral based, not large growth numbers, very, high retention. You can call it those, lifestyle type agencies, that you might hear about now that, take care of their clients, build rapport, have them for a long period of time, and then can just keep in, kind of roll with, the service aspect of it. So I was brought in, obviously the whole hope was that I was going to like the business and succeed in the business to become that third generation ownership. But I brought the sales role to it. So
Okay.
they've tried different salespeople over the years. Some worked for part time, some worked, a little bit longer, but then left. So obviously, bringing in another family member was just the hope that this would stick, and I would have to be able to build the sales, end of it. 16, 17 years later, conversation in my sales meeting today was, are we a service or a sales organization? And to us, and I just heard, Kelly Donahue Piro talk about this on one of her podcasts. We're a growth organization.
Yes.
And, it took a lot of years to kind of change the mindset just versus what I'm doing versus what the whole agency is doing.
Yes.
So that was, that was my role. It was, here's a computer, here's a phone, start cold calling people, start figuring this out and, build a book of business. And it's pretty much what I did.
When did your current position or title is vice president? So when did you evolve into that role?
All right. So our family agency, when I joined, was a 50-50 partnership between my father and my uncle. My uncle retired about 7 years ago. And it was at that moment that I merged into that role. And
Okay.
also the role that I've kind of, probably have been doing for a long period of time, but really took it over as, running a lot of the day-to-day operations, whether it comes to staffing, whether it comes to operations in general, processes, procedures, obviously sales,
Yeah.
was all run by me and kind of, evolved. But, once it turned into from a partnership with my father and uncle to me and my dad, that's when things really started to change for our agency.
So when you started to, kind of jump into the role, what kind of things did you implement in your agency, with that increased responsibility?
So, it's funny. Probably nothing different than I was implementing before.
Right, right, right.
One part of my family's, agency background and, the good and the bad and the challenges along the way was a lot of times when you're trying to implement new things, new technology, new, processes, new whatever, you need to get buy-in from the ownership.
Yes.
I, didn't like that because I was the one doing all that stuff. So I just pushed it through.
Yeah.
Right. And if it cost money, I would pay for it. And if
Mm,
it, I wouldn't go and get it approved because it was going to help me in the sales or me and, in the service or the service team.
mm.
So if it was something that I saw fit and I was willing to invest my own money into it, I would just do it. And then I would tell them about it later. So when it came to, that new role as a vice president, It just was a little bit easier because it no longer was just my money, and it was the agencies, and we're able to actually do the right things. But I think I earned the allowing, because things tend to work and business was growing and doing really well, that there wasn't a lot of pushback. If I invested in something and it worked out well, that's great. Let's look at the next piece and keep going on from there. So that was kind of where the role didn't really change much.
Yeah.
And I know one thing you want to touch on real quick. I don't see that changing much as the next role change comes
Yeah.
on. I feel like when you run an operation in the day to days, whether it's having full access to the money, or the profit in order to invest where you want to or not, that's where I feel like if that stuff's not changing, then the operations in the day to day is not going to change too much. And I think just the way our family dynamics were, and it worked out really well. My father, let me do that with no pushback.
Yeah.
If there was something that bothered him, he would come talk about it afterwards, and then I'd probably just have to give him a little more details of what was happening, and then he'd be like, "Oh, okay, yeah, that's fine." And it's
Yeah.
really just he wanted that extra little piece of knowing the background of where my mind was going, or my mindset of why I was doing it this way. I think over the whole time we've had very minimal disagreements on the way something should be done, and because of that, we just stay in our lanes and we do what we got to do.
I'd imagine, and I don't know what the staff situation was like at that time, but I remember that made the transition that much easier because you were showing leadership before you were giving any type of leadership title. You were showing
100%.
this is what we need to move forward. These are things that are going to benefit our agency. So that probably made, as you were giving that, vice president title of, probably a
Yep.
young man, that made that transition that much easier.
I think that is 100% correct. The lead by example,
Yeah.
mentality that people should have in business. Um, I think that panned out a lot, especially
Yeah.
with the fact that there was employees that have been here for a long period of time, and obviously some of them have seen me from when I was a little kid, preschool
Right.
years, and to be able to adjust and change. It wasn't like they just threw the role at me. It wasn't like I just came in out of the blue. They saw what I'd already built for 10 years prior, and where I was going and where I was taking the company, and they were able to do that based off of you know what I what my daily actions are. I don't sit there with my feet up. I'm not golfing in the afternoon all days.
Yeah.
I'm working the hours. I'm running the business. I'm making the changes for myself, and it was much easier for them to see that because they're already watching me do it. It's not
Yeah.
me just telling them, "Oh, this is what I want you to do."
Yeah, segueing right into your next big role, which is exciting news. You are set to be president of Crowley Insurance Agency, which I believe is April 2023, which again, you're already handling all these things. You
Yeah.
have a big hand in running the agency now. So tell me a little bit about you becoming president, any changes that you may see, or what do you think about this
It's
becoming the big guy?
it's having the no longer filling my father in on things, and just doing them, and then maybe having a conversation later on. It's now I'm unable to just do them, and I don't have to think twice about
Yeah.
them. Not that that's a it worked out really well, but I did everything very cautiously. I
Yeah.
made sure I did a lot of research. I didn't take gambles on testing with different things that was either going to cost the agency or us money or time or anything along those lines. Um, I think that's going to be the biggest change compared, is that I'm going to have a little bit more of a freedom and eye opening to say, no, I'm going to try this, even if it costs, even if it's a gamble, or if it's
Yeah.
going to take some time. I'm going to be more willing to take those chances to see where it goes and what it's going to take for our agency. Whether it's increased marketing spend, whether it's adding different employees or people, or growing in certain aspects. I think that I'm not going to be like, is it really the right time? Should I
Yeah.
wait? Should I do this? Now I'm just going to try it, and if it
Yep.
doesn't work, then I'll learn. And
Yes.
if it does, then even better. And I have a kind of a good feeling that most of the stuff will end up working. because that's been the history of things. As long as you put the effort into it and you know what you're doing and you do your research, I think, you'll be able to just invest back into the business in certain ways that maybe I'm a little more cautious about right now.
Any of those things you can share, or that you can see, I'm gonna add this, or within this first year, we're gonna do this.
Yeah.
Anything?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So actually the first thing we're doing, and we're going to start within the next few weeks, because I can't wait until April. So
Yeah.
I'm not gonna, and just another one of those. I'm willing to do it knowing that this is, where we're the path we're headed. Um, you always hear people talk about their marketing budgets.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you have a firm marketing budget. I think there's a lot of agencies that even if they say they do, it's not really a firm marketing budget. There's definitely some that'll be like, oh, I spend 20% on marketing.
Mm.
And you look back and they know the numbers and they have, it allocated in different aspects. That's one thing that I'm putting together right now. We are hiring, our friend Chris over at Advisor Evolved and his local traffic
Mhm.
marketing, to start doing a few different things for us. And it was something that I've wanted to do for a long period of time. Um, Probably even before he came out with his program. It makes it easier when he does because of the level of trust that I have with Chris,
Yeah.
and obviously the how well and how happy I am with his service for the website and everything else. Um, that's a big one for us because we're actually going to put a good amount of budget behind it and look to see the different avenues that we want to grow in, and how it pans out. And it's not we'll try it for a couple of months or something. And like Chris, even said when we were on the initial conversation, he's just like, you got to give it at least 6 months. And I go,
Yeah.
Chris, you got a solid year for me. I'm not even going to think twice about it.
Yeah.
This is what I'm investing in, and we'll see how it pans out. I think that's a big, that's the starting point of where we'd like to take a few things. And it's really just to keep growing the business in a certain aspect to get to a point where maybe we can fill a few more seats in a way where we can have really defined roles within our agency. I see the future of the, independent agent, especially for the small independent agents, is that to be extremely successful and do things at scale, you need people that fill the right roles.
Yeah.
Me handling marketing, because you have to in an agency this size to be an owner and a salesperson and whatever else, isn't convenient. So we got to get to the point where we're hiring a marketing person.
Yeah.
If we want to get to the point where our claims are being taken care of because the carriers aren't, we need a claims person that's filling that role. And I feel like that's where we're going as an industry, is that you need those defined roles for people. Everybody knows what their roles within the agency are, and you're able to build off of those, versus everybody just trying to wear,
Yeah.
7 or 8 different hats. And but you got to get there when you have, the revenue in order to hire the right people. So I think that's, we're going to, scale on sales and producing to get to that point where we're able to build and really be fine tuned on what each person is doing.
Yeah, and something you touched on earlier that I want to get into a little bit is, which I love how you phrase this, that you are a growth agency and how you're going to relate that to your staff. Can you share what you're doing with them that might be a change from, focused on service to also incorporating a sales aspect to it?
Yeah. So we do have, kind of two divisions. We have a sales division and we have a service division. That doesn't mean our salespeople don't do service work at all. We try and limit it to what their role really is.
Mhm.
And our service account managers are supposed to, or the goal for them is to actually service the account. We've recently changed the account manager position here so that they are defined accounts that they manage.
Mhm.
Years back we had that, the alphabet split, and then as you added staff, you might have just added different people that did different things based on what their skill sets were, their the speed and comfortability that they had. Um, Stuff would come in, whoever answered the phone would take care of this, and it's just
Mhm.
kind of nothing moving in that same direction. We split everybody off into specific accounts. Everybody has like their own book of business that they manage, and with that and some of the goals that they have to hit is to increase coverage, is to cross sell, is
Yeah.
to make sure to see and use the salespeople as partners in that. I tell the staff, you know once they're through our initial sales process and they become, an account and they're in the account manager's, possession now, it's their account and it's not the producer's account.
Yeah.
And the reason is because I want them to quarterback if there's any issues. I
Mhm.
want them to be the one that says, "Hey, Mr. or Mrs. Producer, I need you to reach out to this person because you only sold them a monoline and you have the relationship right now. And I think you need to like I want them to push back and make sure that things are always looking for what's the next opportunities, what's the next way that we can, service this that turns something into a sales, a referral, or whatever else. If you think that way, you're always going to be doing what's best for the customer in a way that you think that they're going to go and shout it from rooftops, right? Because you want them to shout how great you are from rooftops. Um, if you just take that payment, frustrated because they're calling in their payment and want you to pay it, or you're not thinking that you're trying to make this the best call of their day, or make them feel good or happy or satisfied, because you're just doing that reactive work. That's going to limit the potential of growth. That's going to limit the potential for longevity. That's going to limit the potential for referrals. So it's really just changing the mindset,
Yeah.
changing that process, and changing what the goal of this is. It's funny. I had a prospect call, and they're a local doctor, and I know the wife is a doctor as well. And immediately I said, this is something. Oh yeah, great. They have great personal lines, right? It's a doctor. They live in a nice house, drive nice cars, have an umbrella policy. Obviously, they're unhappy with where they are because they're shopping. And I go, but I'm looking at it like, they have 2 medical practices that they own. They have staffs on both of them. How can we turn this into from 3 policies to 60 policies, right? But that's
Yeah.
immediately before I even had that conversation is what
Yeah.
I'm thinking. And I said, that's how I think. I need you guys to think that same way.
Yeah.
And it's not that they're the ones that are comfortable doing it, but they're the ones bring it back to me, bring it back to the producers, bring it back to the people that do feel comfortable having those
Yeah.
conversations, and have them do it versus just kind of running this cycle or in this wheel of our days, and all of a sudden those opportunities are missed or those things aren't even talked about because you're the one that was on the phone talking to them about something, right? And just having the conversations, learning about them and learning about the risks that they have versus just taking a reactive service request and then just getting them off the phone.
Yeah. It's I was so interested in that, and I know you presented basically about the same thing at the most recent IAOA event, and I was so interested in it because that is something that I made a change to in our agency this year at the beginning of the year, and I really thought it through. And other than in other years, just asking our staff to ask for the cross sell, I finally figured out. Well, we have to measure this,
Yeah.
and I used a lot of what Billy Wagner does to kind of gamify things a little bit. I made a spreadsheet and I set up rewards for them, and I said, and I set it up kind of individually that each person during this quarter has to have 12 cross sell upsell attempts.
Yep.
And I don't ask, you don't have to be the greatest salesman in the world. It's just a matter of asking, hey, I noticed that we don't have car insurance currently in your household. Would you like us to quote that for you? Like, that's it. That's as simple as it has to get.
You know what you said there?
What?
You said attempts. You
Yeah.
didn't say, and that's the key. I think that's the
Yeah.
key for a lot of them. If you put the pressure, and I think about it the way I even raise my kids, right? You put the pressure on them to say, I need you to convert 12 things, or I need you to make, 12 calls, and or whatever it is, and you're tying it to the result versus the process.
Correct.
That
Yeah.
changes the way that they want to go into it.
Yeah.
And if they think, okay, listen, I need to do 2 of these a day. Okay,
Yeah.
just 2 of them a day, whatever it is, and you can make it very simple for them, and you can teach them the process, and this good things will come from it. And
Correct.
it's just a matter of developing the habits,
Correct.
because when those habits are developed, you're then able to turn these habits into your process.
That's right.
I start every day doing 2 of these. What are they? I write one thank you card every week. Okay, great. Where's that go? Right. And just keep developing them, and all of a sudden this becomes the way.
Yes.
And they won't remember the days before that, And then if you look back and you're like, oh, what was the responses from those, two reach outs a day or two, potential cross sells a day? And be like, oh, well, our book has, now got, 2.3 policies per, active customer versus, 1.9. Okay,
Correct.
great. That's a great way to look at it,
It,
and it might take a while for you to get to that point.
mhm.
But again, you're not putting the pressure on them and they're more apt to do it.
But, and those are some of the things that we've been discussing in our meetings is policy per household,
Mhm.
retention, and this is how we do it. Plus, we also go over this score sheet. And so we can all see, and that's a little bit of accountability.
Yeah.
And to see, I have 11, more to go this quarter. I've also tied in reviews, which I've been trying to get reviews for years, and I know they're big in your agency.
Yep.
I didn't I did ask my staff, to help out with that, but until there was some accountability assigned to it, until there was a score sheet, it
Yeah.
didn't happen. And we tied
Right.
that in with attempts too. Each staff person is responsible for 15 asks or attempts
Right.
each, and you see those, and I'm like, we're gonna get some out of those, and it's gonna
Oh,
grow. So,
absolutely.
so that has been in our agency. That's the best thing I've done in years, and it's got some buy-in from them. Yeah,
Well, and here's the thing, and some agencies, whether they're listening or just in general, they might be at a position where they're not going to see a big enough change in their head to say, okay, is that really worth making all these changes? What's the ROI of this, or what's this going to happen? And you got to think back and say, if they develop a habit of asking for a Google review every time a customer interacts with them, and have a way to keep it so that who's already left them, so they're not asking the same people that have already left them over and over again.
yeah,
And they constantly ask, and they develop that as a process, and then they always ask for that cross seller, that that referral. And if they keep doing these things, it's not the initial, oh wow, we just made X number of dollars more. It's what you're going to get from that person that has those habits. What you now get as far as, your agency. I used to be the one that, really pushed for the reviews, like you said, for myself, for the
yeah,
agency. And it was just, you could see it. It was the new business sales would come in, and those are the ones leaving the reviews, and
yeah,
not the, the service aspect of it, until I made changes. And now it's not me that's, getting them.
yeah,
And sometimes I'll feel like, man, I'm left behind a little bit. I gotta start doing it myself. And I'll jump back into it and, put it back into a process for me. I tell you, it pays off in the long run. And the more you can make those little changes and those little habits, the better off your agency is going to be.
yeah, yeah. So, describe your role in the agency right now? What kind of functions are you handling yourself?
Uh, Basically, still a little bit of everything.
Yeah,
This year, I tried pulling myself out of being the leading producer.
mhm.
Um,
It's a
some
hard one.
months it's a hard one, yeah. And I love selling,
Yeah,
especially, I'm a relationship salesperson. I've never was a cold caller. I never,
yeah,
uh, was really the type, put me in a ring with a bunch of other agents and see who's better. I always thought, I'm already better. I'm not gonna go and battle for you. I'll
yeah,
find 12 other clients that agree, and
yeah,
I can just manage their business for them. But I love taking a risk and really pointing out and taking the time with a customer that has never had that attention to detail put into
yeah,
somebody with their insurance. And I don't care if it's a home, auto, and umbrella, or if it's a small business owner, or whatever the case is. And then being still the person that people can turn to when there's a problem. And that was,
mm,
that was a big change. I used to want to do everything, internally myself, and that was a big problem I had, starting as a 22-year-old jumping in this business. But over the years, you've learned that it's like, no, I want to be the person that you go to when there's a problem. I have a team of people if you have a car change or a billing question or
mm,
whatever else. And so I'm still, involved in a lot of that. I'm still involved in the sales, obviously the day-to-day operations, and just managing the growth, and then still trying to lead in some aspects of, social media and digital marketing,
yeah,
content creation, video. Those are all things that, fall under my category.
yeah. So, in your president role, what? Which one of those hats are you going to be able to take off? Because you got to
None.
take off one or two.
Probably none. One of my goals for 2023 is to be more hands-on and develop more training processes built in. I have always been somebody that tried to lead by example, as we
Yeah,
talked about, and in that I'd be like, oh yeah, we can just do this and do that, and I would just kind of like tell it versus train it. And over the years, obviously that could be a big problem depending on how fast others can pick it up. And if one person picks it up, you think everybody can pick it up. And that's
correct.
not the case,
Yeah,
especially as you make adjustments and changes over the years. There's different technologies, there's different tools, there's different ways of doing business or in the way the customer thinks. Just to expect people to do certain things um is not the right way. It's almost
no,
useless. And that's my biggest hurdle and goal, is to say, okay, well, now I'm pulling myself out of this, you know, increased production like I've been doing. I need to fill that time, spending individual time, team time, whatever the case is, hands on training, right? Role playing scenarios, watching people go through, systems, making sure they understand not only the what, the how, the why, the when, all of those things before I pull back, versus being like, well, this is how you do it, and then see ya. Well, they don't understand the why behind
no,
it. So if they don't understand the why, this is not going to
correct.
work. And so, I mean, I've spun my own wheels over the years because of it, but this is now giving me the, I think I have the clarity that this is what I need to be spending a good chunk of my time doing,
Yeah,
time blocking the schedules, so that, we are successful at continuing this on a, consistent basis.
yeah. Well, it's going to make your team better. A hundred
100%.
percent,
Yes.
100%. My concern is, of course, there's only so many hours in a day,
Yeah. Yeah.
and to produce, and it's hard to be good at everything. And that's a flaw that I have, is I want to be great at everything,
Right.
and you're not going to be.
No.
So what are you going to give up and delegate? And that's hard.
Yeah. And
Especially,
I think this year was a good thought and step back, for at least on the production side, right? I would rather be the person that is, out being the face and driving
yeah,
the business in for the other people to handle, right? And or some kind of piece like that or role like that, because that might be an easier one to adjust versus just not handling the that prospect from start to finish. And I think that's where, if I can pull more and more of that off without it sacrificing and hurting our growth,
correct.
um, I'll be able to spend much more time, focusing on, the marketing aspect and, the operations and the training. And that way I can, keep bringing in, business, because they're getting better as they go.
Yeah,
That's the goal. That's the thought process behind it. And like I said, eventually getting to that point where I hire a full-time person that's handling marketing. So if, we're doing a video or a piece, I might be the one talking, but I'm not the one editing and turning it
mhm,
into a written and changing
yeah,
this and changing that and all that other stuff that I do now. If I can pull pieces of that stuff off, it's just going to fine tune and it's going to scale the business even more so.
yeah. What kind of tech are you using in the agency?
So, we're actually very simple when it comes to, we have our management system. We use QQ Catalyst.
Okay,
We have
good.
Agency Zoom as our CRM. Um, we use the Raiders and the VoIP systems.
Yep.
The typical normal stuff.
Yeah.
We're on the verge of launching Glovebox.
Mm,
We've been on the verge for a while. New York's a little funny when it comes to ID cards.
okay.
So so that's we're waiting for the next little update and piece to come out so we can launch that. But you know, uh, I'd say the biggest and the best piece of technology that I ever put in, and we mentioned his name before, was Advisory Vault
Yeah.
with Chris, and having the tools that he has on the back end of the site, not just the website in general. I mean, obviously that's great. We've loved it. Business has increased because of it, and their service and communication has been awesome. But the quote video
Yeah.
platform that he has built in, you can try and duplicate it through using Loom and all these other things, Nothing looks as slick. And I mean, I've been using it for 5 years, and the results that I get from prospects, the words they say. At one point, I was going to go through, all of our Google reviews to see how many people mentioned it. And because
Mm,
it's that many. Oh, they put this great video, walkthrough of all our policies and made it
mm.
so simple for us to understand. That kind of piece, when you see it over and over and over again, you realize, wow, this is truly a tool we couldn't live without. And
Yeah.
again, we could duplicate it with, other platforms, piecing, 6 things together so it looks okay. But he makes it so simple. He's, don't listen to this, Chris. You're greatly undercharging for that platform.
Whoa.
And yeah. And so, but just not for me and Brad, right? Um, but the thing is, it's like you got to use it. And there's so many people that still don't use it if they have it. And I talked to people at the recent conference, same thing.
Yeah.
Mike, one of these days I'm going to start using that. And I'm like, you told me that 4 years ago. Like,
Yeah.
this is just, it is such a great tool. And the prospects still, after all these years and people talking about video or whatever the case is, people still don't realize that this is such a good moneymaker. It turns prospect into sales and turns this into referral and new clients into more referrals. It's just been a great tool that we've had for years now.
This portion of the program brought to you by Chris Langiel at Advisor Evolve.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, your bill's coming.
Okay, so one of the things we obviously use Advisor Evolved as well. 100% agree. Quote vids it's simple, people love them, and really with all their formats, it's all comes back to your site. So it all has a uniform look.
Yep.
The gravity forms are on your site, and everything comes to one place. So the convenience of it is flat out top notch, and I just don't think
Yeah.
there's anything better in the industry. That's my opinion.
No,
So
I totally agree. And I think that, I've talked to a lot of users over the years. I've talked to people that use other type stuff. There's marketing people and, really smart people that talk about how often you should be changing your website or how often you should be making changes. A lot of it has to do with utilization.
yeah,
And Chris will say that too. He doesn't baby us as customers. He gives us the tools to succeed and has it built in very nicely. And it's our job as, business owners and, salespeople or whatever to utilize those tools to, create content to put on that website so it pushes up higher on, Google search, whatever the case may be. And I think that's where some people get frustrated over the years and they're like, well, this isn't working for me. Well, why isn't it working? Have you ever tried it? And then all of a sudden they'll be like, well, no, I don't do that. I wanted him to do that. And it's like, well, that's not his job.
no,
Like, that's not what you're actually paying for. You'd be paying a lot more if you wanted him to do that. This is him taking care of the web platform and giving us those tools.
yeah,
And I think that's the key is that I've had people look at my website. They're like, oh, that looks nice. I'm like, yeah, I custom built that piece. And they're like, how'd you figure it out? I'm like, I just clicked around and played. Like, these websites are drag and drop once you figure out how to do some of
yeah,
that stuff.
yeah.
And he has the walkthroughs, the video tutorials, all that stuff to show you how to do it. It's just a matter if you want to take the time to learn it.
And if you can't, they have the best support in the business
Oh
to
yeah,
help take care of it for you.
yeah.
Um, tell me about a couple mistakes that you've made along the way and learned from.
I kind of touched on one a little bit earlier. As a 22-year-old, 23-year-old, 24-year-old salesperson, especially joining a family agency that think of the typical Main Street agency. As you're trying to go out there, you want it to be the do all be all for everybody. And even as business for me started to blossom, and this, the sales increased, I would still want it to be that point of contact for everybody. And it didn't matter if they had a question regarding something that was totally uninsurance related, but they'd call me and they'd be like, who do you know that can do this? I wanted everybody to, always
Yeah,
talk to me and build those relationships and build that rapport. Well, year after year after year of kind of, hand holding that, it got to a point where I was burnt out. My staff hated the fact that, I still wanted to do everything.
yeah,
And that caused some, tough frustration that still to this day, I still have clients that just text me, simple things that should not go
Yeah.
from customer to my personal cell phone, right? There's other channels that it needs should go through. And it's because I had to reteach, you know, hundreds, if not, thousands of clients how to communicate service requests with me or with our team. And because I onboarded them like, call me for everything.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it's like, no, don't call me. Don't talk to me. Talk to my staff. Like,
Yeah.
and it was that frustration time frame that as the more hats I started to put together and wear, that the harder it was to get them to, make, their own adjustments on how they do things. That was probably, one of the biggest areas that I struggled with, is because then a lot of the service aspect would, funnel through me. They'd funnel out through me, even if
Correct.
the other people were doing the back end work. And it just had to stop. And I had to, kind of cold turkey it in a way, unless you paid a
Yes.
whole bunch of money and say, I'm not talking to you unless, you're triple A plus of a client on this kind of stuff. If not, I'm looping you back to the staff.
Yeah.
And but then the staff had to relearn too, right? Because they got away from managing some of our accounts, and it was a work in progress. But that was definitely one of the biggest mistakes that I made starting. And I encourage anybody that is starting or new, or get a new producer, is even if you need them to service, don't have them funneling everything through them,
Yeah.
right? Have a common denominator of where service goes, even if they pick up some of the back end work. Just because when you get to a point, or when a producer gets to a point, they're not able to separate that, and it causes frustration, team frustration and client frustration. So don't definitely don't do that.
Double-edged sword, I think, for so many of us, and as a new producer, because you want to be accessible, you want to establish that relationship, and you want
Right.
to earn their trust, and you want to earn their referrals. And so for so many new agency owners that are a one-person shop, well, they are doing everything.
Right.
So then I think the solution then, as soon as you do get help, to force everything and funnel everything that direction, so
Yeah.
you can start to teach your customers, this is how we service things now.
Well, if you're one person shop now, start figuring a way to funnel those requests in. Don't have that request be text message to your personal cell
Yeah.
phone, right? Have them email it to service at blank agency.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
then
Great
that
advice.
way, you're still doing it on the back end. They might know you're still doing it on the back end, but you're starting to train the customers, right away. If they need a certificate, email it certificates at blank agency, or whatever, how you want to eventually change it or plan it. Because, even when you get that person, if they're still funneling through your personal email or your personal cell phone number, through text messaging that somebody else can't really see, or you haven't opened up those doors for somebody else to see, you're still the one passing it. And if you're still passing it, eventually you're still going to do it, because you're going to look and be like, oh, Timmy or Sally's too busy. I'll just take care of it. Right. And you can't do that, because it's going to catch up with you. So you might as well create that process right from the start.
Correct. Great advice. And that's what it's doing, is creating a process, which for when you do have service staff, process is already in place.
Yes.
So,
100%.
and the expectation of the customer is still in place, that this is what I do to get service on my account.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Great advice.
it's funny, just because we've been mentioning it and talking about, how great, Advisory Evolve support system is. Chris has been telling people for years, email support, right? The support email, I don't know about you, but every time I email it, I would say 80% of the time, Chris still is the one that responds to me.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That doesn't mean he doesn't have support people,
Yeah.
right? But it's still funneling through that same process,
Yeah.
right? If
Right.
I email Chris something directly that is a service request for my site, that doesn't help him if he's busy doing something and it doesn't go to the team that's supposed to
Yes.
be handling it. It's just no different. It's no
Correct.
different in our agencies. And, I don't have it done that way, right? But I wish I did. I wish that's how I created things. So if you're that one person shop, or small shop, that you can still make those adjustments now, that's what you got to make. Because you could have 7 people watch that email. You can have the ticketing system. You can have all these different things that you can build within that, even if you're handling it and knocking them out. But at least that way, when you're adding that team, the customer doesn't see a change, right?
Yeah.
Your internal might see a change, but the customer doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah. What advice do you have for a scratch agency that's getting going?
Uh, that developing processes is definitely one that I
Yeah,
think is needs to be their top three priorities. Scratch agencies or newer agencies that start, obviously they need to produce business. They need to get money in the
yeah,
door. And some people are like, oh, don't be a generalist and try and be an expert in one thing. Sorry, when you are with zero customers and you're starting out, that is something that is very hard to just say, I'm going to really try this niche and I'm going to wait to build out this niche, because guess what? If it doesn't work, you don't have anything else to fall back on. So, you need to build to a certain point to then change it and adjust, to certain things. It doesn't mean write everything, but it means you can't just be limited to, one focus and one avenue. But I think, as you develop those processes, like you said, as you're a one person shop and you hire that first, virtual assistant, you hire that first employee or whoever the case is, they can step in with very little disruption because you already have the how, why, when, what, all built and ready to be followed, and then the customer doesn't need to make any changes. You don't have to say, "Hey, you're going to talk to Timmy now, and Timmy's going to be your point of contact for service related things." No, it's still going to come through this ticketing system or funnel or whatever the case is. That's to me the biggest thing that they need to do, even if it takes a little extra time up front. And it almost seems like it's pointless because I don't have any people. Why am I
yeah.
building a process on how to do this? It's going to help in the long run. And it's going to be the long run when you don't have time to train.
That's
Think
right.
about when that scratch agency hires that first person. It's when they're really at their wits' end and they have, no time to do some of the service aspect that they need to hire more. Are you going to be able to stop everything you're doing to
No,
to train them? No.
way easier in the beginning.
Right.
You know,
So that's
you're doing the service work anyway. So
right.
why not make a quick Loom video, write
Right.
down your write down your process. Not many are going to do it. I didn't. I mean, but I didn't have the foresight to do that. But
No.
now that we're looking back, yes, 100%, that is one of the most important things you can do
Yeah.
if your intention is to grow into an agency
Yeah,
and
yeah,
grow.
yeah, and that's huge. What's the purpose? What's your vision? What are you looking to do? I mean, not everybody wants to be a 100-person shop with a bunch of employees. Some
Yeah,
might want to grow into that lifestyle agency that that I jumped into.
yeah,
The thing is, no, there's no wrong answer. Whatever you want to grow it to, or wherever you want to be, that's a perfect place because it's for
yeah.
you, right?
That's right.
That's the reason you own your own business. Um, but the other piece of advice is to not jump on all the pieces of technology or shiny objects, as people
Yeah,
like to call it. There is a lot of tools.
yeah,
But nothing is worse than not paying for a tool when you don't have any income and not
yes,
utilizing it. Um, Focus, lean and mean, initially, on only the stuff you need. Set the goals when you hit to certain parts to invest in the pieces that is actually going to make a return that you're going to use right away, and look at what the pain points are. Okay, I need this tool to fix this pain point for me, my staff, or my clients, and this is what it's going to do. If it's not a pain point, don't even waste your time thinking about it. Wait till it becomes a pain point, and then look to invest.
yeah. Yeah, great advice. That's something that I learned not to do and not to grab too many things at one time.
Yeah,
And now I know I won't buy anything unless I know that I'm going to establish process for my team to be able to use it and that we're going to be ready for. You mentioned Glove Box. I was looking at them and I think that would be an outstanding tool. I know that we're not ready for it. And I know that
right,
we have things going on where I'm not gonna be able to get the staff involved and get the staff buy-in. So I'm just not gonna do it. I'm gonna put it off for maybe 6 months, see if we're
right.
ready then. Otherwise,
Yeah.
it's not worth it to me. Yeah.
And maybe because I've been waiting on some pieces of that technology to work in New York the way I need it to before I launch, I've been thinking about this for a long period of time. Not only how am I going to onboard clients into it to use it, how my staff's going to do it, but I hear frustrations from other agency owners that get technology like that, and they're like, the adoption rate's not great, and it's like, well, how are you implementing it? Well, I just sent an email that said sign up.
Yeah.
Well, that's not going to do what you need it to
No.
do, or you don't have the right expectation, right? And I talked to a very high up at a carrier that came in, was in town for a meeting, and they actually wanted a meeting with me solely on to talk about Glovebox because they're working on doing a direct integration with them. and they're like, Mike, what is your thought on this? And I said, do I think right now this is an urgent need for me and my clients? No. Okay. Do I think what the guys at Glovebox have been building and where they're going to build it and all the nuances that they're looking to do is going to be a huge win and benefit for independent agents moving forward, maybe in 2-3 years? Yes, I do.
Yeah.
Right. Amazon started selling insurance in the UK recently for homeowners. Um, not to say that they're definitely going to sell auto and home insurance in, the States here, but I would like to have that technology. I have people tell me now, "Oh, I really liked Geico's mobile app." It's like, "Wait, what?" But the thing is, it's like if I don't even have something that gives them the solutions, if I'm not, taking some of these, reactive requests off my service team's, lap by just
Yeah.
offering the pieces here, the thing is, it's like I'm not doing my clients or my team, due diligence. And, I'm not happy that it's, delayed a little bit, but if I didn't have this process, I probably would have been that one of those frustrated agency owners because I would have sent the same thing. Why isn't everybody signing up? Why is it only a 12% adoption rate? And it's like, well, you sent out just the generic emails that said sign up,
Yeah. No.
right? I think, it might be a 12% adoption rate for my existing staff, but it's going to be a 95% adoption rate for any new clients, right? Because
Yeah.
we're going to onboard them into it. We're going to say this is the process. This is the
Yeah.
way that we do business. And as our
Mhm.
current clients evolve, that's going to be where things go. But that's the way to look at it because you know if you just add these things to add it because it sounds cool, or you think it could help. If you're not ready to really push it through, you're going to be frustrated, and then it's just going to cause problems.
Yeah. None of them come ready out of the box
No,
as a demo with all the features involved. You're going to have to build it out. So be prepared to put some time in to
right,
do that. So,
100%.
hey, I want to be respectful of your time. I'm going to go ahead and get this thing wrapped up. Really enjoyed the conversation.
Me too. Yeah, it's a good
And
one.
yeah, looking forward to stay connected. So
Absolutely.
thank you very much for being here, everybody else. Thank you for listening to another edition of the Agents to Owners podcast. And we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Brad.